Hi, OWL Juniors. I'm Mrs. Myers, and today we're going to be talking about ACT Science. We'll do a couple hot tips for ACT Science, and then we will do a practice passage. Okay, review. You should know this from previous years. The ACT Science is 40 questions. In those 40 questions, there are 6 passages. So each passage will have a few questions, usually 5 or 6, and you'll have 35 minutes to do the whole thing. ACT Science is the last one that you take. Remember, there are 4 parts to the science test, or the ACT. Science is the last one, so you'll be tired. And time is usually an issue. So you want to keep an eye on the time. I recommend to students usually try to spend like 5 minutes per passage. You can do 6 or 7, but if you do that for every single one, you'll run out of time. So keep an eye on your watch. Try to do 5 minutes per passage. Okay, this is a review again from previous years. These are my top 5 ACT science tips. Number 1, expect unfamiliar, confusing science content. Okay, it would not be fair if the ACT asked you about science that you learned in Mr. Luke's chemistry class, because not everybody in America had Mr. Luke for chemistry, right? So they can't ask very specific science content things. Not everybody takes chemistry, right? They're going to ask about things that they think maybe nobody's really seen. And they're usually going to give you college level or above science passages. So things that are very complicated and difficult, and they're trying to confuse you and freak you out. Don't freak out. You can absolutely do it. The questions and the answers are there, but also know it's going to be things that are unfamiliar to you. Okay. Number 2, I say question block to save time. What that means is go through the questions and find all the questions that ask about figure 1 and do those first. Then find all the ones that ask about figure 2 and do those next. So try to do them in order. That means that you'll skip around on the questions a little bit, but overall it'll save time and help you not get confused. For example, they like to be really tricky. They're not very nice. They'll say question 1 is about figure 1. Question 2 is about figure 2. Question 3 is about figure 1. 4 is about figure 2, like going back and forth to mix you up. So I would say focus on one section of the passage at a time. That way you don't get confused. All right, my third tip, pay attention to labels and titles, okay? If it says figure 1, maybe circle figure 1 so you know all the questions that go with that picture, okay? Look at the titles on graphs. What's the x-axis? What's the y-axis? What units are they using? Circle it, write all over it, and really pay attention to labels. Again, these are going to be things that are totally unfamiliar. You might not even know what the words are in the labels, but at least you can match which part of this passage goes with which question. Okay. 4th tip, look at trends. You're looking at a graph or table. Are the numbers going up or going down? A lot of times they'll ask you predict what would happen in the next year or the next trial that's not on the graph. If you know they've all been going up every single time, then the answer should be the one that's a little bit higher. Things like that. So pay attention to trends. And then my last tip is ACT is still a paper test. Write all over your ACT. Obviously, during AI, we have some limitations. We can't give you all paper things to practice on. We'll have PDFs instead. But when you get the real one, write all over it. If this PDF and you know how to write on PDFs, do that. Okay, let's look at what these top 5 tips look like on a real ACT passage. This is one from April 2022, so pretty recently. Some of you guys might have even taken this one. You can see here on the left, this is the passage. And here on the right, these are the questions. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions about this passage. How long should you spend on a passage? About 5 minutes. Okay. Things we notice first of all, I noticed that this half of the passage is experiment 1, got table 1 and figure 1. And this side is experiment 2, you got table 2 and figure 2. Notice how I circled all of those labels so then I can find parts of the passage quickly. Otherwise, it kind of all runs together and you get confused. Okay. Other things I might look at right away are the labels. I've got groups and protein concentrations. Okay, so I know I've got different groups, different amounts of protein. Okay, and then down here, my labels on my axes, I'm looking at time for both of these graphs and number of tadpoles on the y-axis. Okay, notice I have not read the passage yet. I don't plan on reading the passage. Only read the passage if you can't find the answer in the pictures, okay? Because the passages are hard, they will slow you down, you will not finish on time. I would say go straight to the questions, ignore the reading, okay? Other things that we should look at. Notice how in these questions they skip around, like this one's about experiment 2, this one's about experiment 1, experiment 2, experiment 1. I would do all the 1s first, all the 2s next, and then number 29 is about both. Maybe save that one for last, okay? Other things you might notice, 31 is not about either part of the passage. 31 is just a, do you know this very common science knowledge thing? So 31, you will have to have learned something in a science class. It's a bio question probably. In 27, they do ask you what a control is. You have to know what a control is from other classes. So this is how I would start off annotating this. Okay, you are going to try this passage now. I have linked this passage, it'll link in the Edpuzzle. There's also a short link there if that link isn't working for you. I'm gonna ask you to take 5 minutes right now, pause the video, and try the passage. Try to answer those questions. Focus on sections of it, don't read the text. Look at figure 1, find the figure 1 questions, things like that. All right, we're gonna try it for 5 minutes, and then we'll look at our answers. Please pause. All right. The next thing I want you to do, you should have worked on that for 5 minutes, is compare your answers with someone nearby. Maybe there are people at your table, maybe somebody next to you. Look at their answers, look at your answers. Are they the same? Is there one you couldn't figure out? Try to compare answers now. Try to make your answers better. Pause the video. All right, and these are the answers. You can see 27 is C, 28 is J, 29 is B, 30 is G, 31 is A, 32 is F, and 33 is D. Check your answers, see how you did. Okay, now I want to note, do not be discouraged. On the real ACT, if you're trying to get the average score in Kansas, which is 21, about 21, you only need to get 58% of the ACT science questions correct. So a little bit more than half. If you're getting like 4 of those 7 right, you are on track to be an average junior in Kansas. Good job. If you're trying to be competitive, like a 30 or higher, you need to be inching closer to a B or a C on these questions. So around 35 out of 40 would be a score of 30 on the science ACT, which is pretty competitive. Best way to get better at science ACT is to practice. So we'll practice again in a couple weeks. Thanks for watching, guys.